Gender mainstreaming into events. So events, program, workshop, and forum are central to how we inspire dialogues, we empower, build partnership, and we accelerate learning. Right? This is a very important aspect of what we do in our community. So what does this toolkit helps to achieve? Promote diversity and inclusion of all stakeholders, advance gender equality and women empowerment, support vulnerable group participation in all that we do. There are key areas where this tool is applicable. First is during pre-event preparation, during the event and post-event. So ensure CCOP events reflect our commitment to equity and inclusion. Gender perspective must be embedded from the earliest stage of the planning to the final stage of the planning. So example is during events we have various processes that are involved and various components that are very important to have a successful event. Agenda is part of it, panel composition, partner participations or participants, venue accessibility. So this toolkit will ensure that during the creation of the agenda, right, gender is integrated effortlessly. During the panel composition, ensure that there is a gender balance. In partners and participants section, ensure that we have enough um, you know partnerships that we ensure that we achieve gender parity. Venue accessibility, this toolkit will ensure that there is selection of venues that promote safety, accessibility and inclusivity. All right, that is actually what this toolkit does. So there's a checklist for events, guidelines that has been created for these purposes, and it's available on the gender mainstreaming toolkit. So other things to also focus on during the events is equal visibility and speaking time for both genders, preparation for gender and youth focused engagement, ensuring that the engagement is balanced, equal visibility and speaking time. Already mentioned that earlier. Interactive section, inclusive data collection, um, feedback mechanism. Ensure there is, a feedback mechanism implemented to gather outputs and inclusivity of the event. Post-event, reporting on gender parity is very important. This will inform future events, of course, also inform learnings, right, to help have a better event in the future. Communications, gathering of statements made during the event. So there should be like a report that informs how we're able to ensure gender parity during the event. Also, use of inclusive language. How do you monitor that? Through the collection of or gathering of statements made, we're able to discover or find out how well we have done in leveraging inclusive communication strategy. We've talked a lot about inclusive communication guidelines during the event, right? Now let's take a closer look at what inclusive communication guidelines involves. Assist up inclusive and gender sensitive communication is a key part of fostering equity and diversity across our work. So this means using words and images that portray people of all genders and identities on equal footing. All right, it avoids stereotypes or expression that may be perceived as biased, exclusionary, or demeaning. So let's take examples. Um, so this is not one size fits all, like I've emphasized in previous slides, but understanding the context of each of the events, communication, assets, or whatever situation that this is applicable. So instead of using man or men or mankind, you could use gender neutral language like people, individuals, humanity, human beings, and humankind, right? This is advisable to be able to pass information across to several individuals from different perspectives or contexts or several social and cultural perspective without having to explain a lot of things, having to define what you mean by man or mankind in that context. An example also is man-made. Instead of using man-made, just use artificial or human-induced. This puts you, uh, in a safe spot, and then it's a gender-neutral language, so it ensures inclusivity. Titles, right? Instead of having Professor John Smith and his wife will attend the event, you can use Professor John Smith and Professor Mary Smith, ensuring that you know how the wife wants to be addressed. This ensure inclusivity and it embrace diversity. You know, so inclusive imagery is also a very important aspect of inclusive communication guideline. Both men and women should be visible and prominent in our images, right? It should be inclusive and diverse. For example, we are organizing an event that is hosting, different people from different cultural contexts, right? Or different or multi cultural events or event that includes people from other parts of the world. The image should be inclusive and diverse. Women should also be shown empowered in our images, not as you know, not in a way that reinforce stereotypes. Like men in engineering outfits and women in rapper and buba. That's for a Nigerian context. Or women portrayed as maybe a nurse, right? Or women portrayed to be carrying a baby, instead of being portrayed to be empowered, right? That's very important, and we should pay attention to it. And that brings us to the end of the session on how to use gender mainstreaming toolkit. This toolkit is available to everyone in CCO.